I I was scared to get on stage and speak, and it wasn't until I found a message that I was passionate about, and that's something that I've learned and I share with other aspiring and emerging speakers now. It's like once you find something you're truly passionate about and kind of connect with a deeper purpose behind it, that's the thing that really starts to overshadow or overpower that fear of speaking.
Sean Ellis is a public speaker, author, and coach. He gets up in front of large audiences in a corporate arena. But by nature, he's an introvert. What does it take to get out of your comfort zone to chase your dreams? How did Sean do it? And how can you? Come join the conversation about learning to navigate change in order to live your very best life. Sean, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Thank you, Pat. I am honored to be here and excited for this conversation. I guess to say tell us your story. Well, I'm 48 years old, so where to begin? I know we can't go into all of it, but I guess to tell you some high points. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a business owner, a speaker, writer, coach. Those are all the labels, but of course the story is what brought all that to life. And I guess I would say my story is I grew up in a small town 3 miles down a dirt road in rural Missouri, and had a great life growing up with my parents. My grandparents were semi-retired farmers who lived down the road, and so I'm not going to start at the very beginning. We're not going to go all through 48 years, but just I say that because I think that's an important foundation. I grew up in that kind of just simple farm, farm life, connected to the land and earth and nature and all those sorts of things. And then I got the idea that I was going to pursue a career in music. So I moved to Nashville when I was 17 years old, and went to college there. And as I share when I speak, a lot of times I say, when I'm on stage in front of an audience, usually to speak about resilience or adaptability. And I'll say that, I had this dream when I was 17 years old to pursue a career in music. And the fact that there's no band on stage tells you things didn't go according to plan. So that was the beginning of, I guess you could say, me having a dream, going for it. And then since then, it's been one lesson after another, learning that, hey, life doesn't always go according to plan. So a couple of years into my journey in Nashville, I realized music wasn't the path. I still love music. I just realized that wasn't the life that I wanted. Wasn't sure what to do, but then I wrote a paper in this human resources class about motivating your workforce to perform, and I really fell in love with that intersection of life and work. And then I thought, there's something there. I still didn't know what to do with it. I thought about management consulting, thought about becoming a pastor. I just knew somehow I wanted to help people's lives be better. And of course, anytime you set out on a path like that, you want to help other people. I think it's a natural setup. Then you're probably gonna have to do some work on yourself, some lessons. So I had to learn those lessons myself, and that's an ongoing journey. But I sort of landed in this speaking world accidentally. Well, I say accidentally. I also don't believe anything's an accident, but the owner of this company, a booking agency for speakers, found my resume from the college where I went, and he called me in, and basically I became the lead agent and built up this corporate speakers division for this speakers agency. And that was 25 years ago now. So so I found, for me, it was fulfilling to work behind the scenes with speakers, put them in front of audiences, help them share their messages. But then I eventually started my own business, and then a decade or so into that, started realizing, like, I think I've got something to say. And it was that seed that was always there. I finally found a message that I was passionate about. And so I got the courage and clarity and started speaking on my own. First time it was just at a church, and then it was for high school students, and then eventually got an association booking and corporations, and now here we are, and it's a big part of what I do. So anyway, that's I don't know if that story is interesting or boring, but we'll at least use that to set the backdrop. That's brought me here. A lot of other stuff in between, from getting married and thinking it was that was going to be forever, and then it wasn't forever, and I've seen twists and turns in the economy and relationships, and becoming a dad, becoming a single dad, which I never expected, becoming a parent of a child with special needs, and then remarrying later in life and going from one kid to three kids, and so life is a journey, which is part of the subtitle of the book. It's a journey, and I guess I'll leave it at that, and you can ask questions, tell me where you'd like to go on that road.
Well, actually, I'm curious. As you moved into public speaking, were you nervous about that? Because many people just dread the idea of getting in front of an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And the answer is yes. And I was scared, and at my core, I still get scared of a lot of things these days. But speaking was definitely a fear, and I think that's one reason it took me so long to really do it, because I was scared of so many things, not only getting on stage, but just putting yourself out there. What will people think? What will people say? But yeah, I mean, I was the shyest kid in school growing up, and so shy in third grade, like I couldn't even ask the teacher to use the restroom. Like, I raised my hands, and I'm waiting for her to call on me, and she took so long. Eventually, when she did call on me, I just said, "Well, it's too late." There was a puddle under my chair, and which I shared just to say that's how shy I was. And then in college, I took a speech class, not because I wanted to, but because we were required to. And I think I got a C plus maybe. So definitely I'm not somebody where, I've met people where they're like, give me a stage and just let me go. And it's what they love to do. For me, it was really, I was scared to get on stage and speak. And it wasn't until I found a message that I was passionate about. And that's something that I've learned, and I share with other aspiring and emerging speakers now. It's like once you find something you're truly passionate about and kind of connect with a deeper purpose behind it, that's the thing that really starts to overshadow or overpower that fear of speaking. Because I heard it somewhere, I can't take credit for this, but somebody said that if you're afraid, it's because you're thinking too much about yourself and not enough about the audience. So if you shift that thinking to what's the value that you can bring to the audience, that definitely, there's all kinds of tools and tactics you can use, but that's a big one, is that mindset shift, or that perspective shift. And it's been a journey. I mean, the first time I got up on stage to speak, I remember being introduced, and I was sitting on stage waiting to be introduced. And once they said my name, I mean, I felt like I was glued to that chair with some kind of force field or something. I mean, I could not get up. And finally I did. And then it felt like kind of breaking through a brick wall. And I stood up there and spoke, and I survived. And a lot of times I think back on that, like, well, just like I survived that time, I'm going to survive this time. And, of course, it gets easier the more you do it. But just to say, yes, I can definitely relate to anybody that feels that fear.
What was the personal message that resonated with you?
As far as what I started speaking about,
Yeah.
it started with a phrase, really, "This moment matters." And that was kind of a phrase that I guess, to rewind, I working behind the scenes with speakers, I built relationships with speakers, and it was actually after spending some time with some of those speakers. We had, I was out for a conference, and so I had a series of lunches, dinners, coffees, whatever, with speakers, and I just realized, like, that's what I've got to do. So I guess, first of all, that was before the message came, that sense that, okay, I've really got to do this, but I still didn't do it and didn't know what to do until I found that phrase, "This moment matters." And because I was thinking, what can I talk about? What would I have credibility to speak about? And that phrase came to me. I was just sitting in my office writing down ideas, and that phrase came to me. And just as I thought about it, I thought, well, I knew that my life at that time, I was in an unhealthy marriage, and had a 1-year-old son, so adjusting to life as a new dad, and I realized, like, in the midst of all that chaos, if I just settle into this moment, there's peace here. And not, I just realized that I had experienced that. So that came to me. And then I also thought, knowing that life wasn't what I wanted it to be at that time, even knowing that I wanted to go down this speaking path, I thought, I can't turn this all around overnight. So it's going to be one moment at a time. So these kind of ideas of what that phrase meant to me, and I thought, there's something there. And then, of course, seeing everybody else living at such a rushed pace, overwhelmed, I just felt like it's something that feels real to me, and something that I think would be valuable to others. So that was the seed that really started that unfolding.
Did you have an aha moment where you found that peace?
The piece of the moment, is that what
Yeah,
you're
the
referring
peace
to?
of the moment where you can just let all the craziness of life go and rush by you and be still.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I haven't thought about that specifically. I guess I don't know that I did have an aha moment prior to that phrase coming to me, and then really just realizing maybe that was the aha moment of, like, because those moments would happen, but I didn't really identify it, I guess you could say. So maybe the aha moment was after that phrase, "This moment matters," and then reflecting on my life and seeing, like, oh, I can see how these moments, where when I was just kind of allowing life to flow, not trying to push or force or fight, that I experienced peace. And then that took me from there. It took me into the field of mindfulness. And so then I started studying, okay, how can we, if this moment matters, how can we be more present and more engaged for more of the moments, and bring some more skill to that, as opposed to just letting it happen or hoping it happens. But I guess the aha of seeing the power of that was that, just reflecting on my life and saying, oh, I can see these places where the circumstances of life were still crazy, but in the midst of that, I was still able to find some peace. And I'm a big journaler. I've got a box sitting beside my desk of 20 years worth of journals. So that also helps too, to be able to go back and reflect and kind of see where I was at different times. So that, I guess that all goes into it.
Well, and one of the things you brought up earlier, I wanted to make sure I commented on is everything you're talking about involves getting out of your comfort zone, which is so hard for most people.
Yeah.
And how do you help people move beyond that comfort zone where they don't want to leave it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's one of the hardest things for all of us, and obviously some more difficult for some of us than others. But I think as humans, we're wired to seek what's comfortable, what's familiar, and really at the root of it is this survival mechanism, because we want to stay safe, we want to stay alive, even though most of the steps outside of our comfort zone these days aren't things that could truly bring us harm. But in our brain, our reptilian brain, it registers as, hey, like, if you step outside of your comfort zone here, you don't know what's going to happen. Something really bad might happen out there. So I guess, first of all, just to say that it's a normal feeling, a natural feeling. And so it's not something wrong with you if you're afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. But for me, I mean, there are a few things. One of them is I think, I heard somebody say that, nothing changes until the pain of staying the same is
Yeah.
greater than the pain of change. So it's connecting with, hey, what's so bad about not changing, about staying as you are? And then on the other side of that, what could be so good about taking this step? What possibilities might be on the other side of it? So from a logical standpoint, those are some things we can do, is connect with, hey, while this is comfortable right now, I think of this, there's the conversation game, kind of, would you rather. I remember a time I was working with a team, and I'm an introvert by nature, so I hate this question. I hate this game, because, come back to me tomorrow and I'll tell you. But if you want an answer right now in the moment, I'm going to struggle. But the idea, would you rather be attacked by 100 ducks or one hippopotamus, something like that. I
What did
again,
you reply?
that one, you know what? I don't know. I think I thought the best I could, and I think I said the one hippopotamus. I feel like I can work with ducks, although I may be wrong about that because I hear, 100 ducks could be pretty intense. So, I did the best I could and just tried to get out of that conversation. But years later, it came to me. I thought, well, what if we can apply that to our lives? Like, would you rather stay in your comfort zone and experience more of what's not comfortable? Because if you've got a sense that you want to change something, either something is wrong or you just have the sense that something could be better. Like for me speaking, like I've got this sense that I really should be doing that. And so would you rather stay comfortable and experience the kind of the compound effect of not changing, or would you rather make the change, step outside your comfort zone and potentially reap all the rewards that could come from that? So it's kind of the, short-term pain, long-term gain sort of thing. Because we're wired to just see, well, short term, like I might step up there, this might fail, I might be embarrassed, all that. And sure, that's real. And then guess what? Just like that day, in third grade where I didn't make it to the bathroom in time. And as humiliating as that was, I still came back to school the next day, still made it through elementary school. And which I think is another logical piece to it, is to realize, okay, let's say, what's the worst that could happen, and kind of play out worst case scenario. And then is it really that bad? What's so bad about that? So those are some logical things, kind of reconnecting with the pain of staying the same, the potential reward of making the change. And then from there, kind of taking, okay, well, what's the smallest step forward you can take? And I'll pause, and I don't want to go on forever here, but those are a few thoughts, and then we can go wherever you want to go from there.
Well, I would argue that in getting out of your comfort zone, even in the tiniest way, you are redefining your comfort zone because you're gaining new skills, new ways to navigate things. So you're constantly shifting it. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden one day, if you're lucky, you might be able to look back and say, wow, my comfort zone, I could never be comfortable in my old comfort zone.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. I mean, to think about what I do now. I mean, a couple months ago, I was in front of the largest audience I've spoken to, which was about 6,000 people, and with 15 or 1,600 people in the room, and then the rest gathered remotely around the world. To think, if you told the third grade version of me that one day I'm going to do that. I mean, if you told the 17-year-old version of me that one day I'm going to do that. There's no way I'd have believed you, and there's no way I could have done that then. But it's just, it's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and it really is like building a muscle. Just like you couldn't step up to a bench press and lift 500 pounds today. But well, maybe you could, depending on your listeners. Maybe you got somebody out there. It's like, it's no problem. For most of us, for me, I'm not going to touch that. But like, okay, well, what can you do today? You can lift something. Maybe it's just the bar, but you start with those, small, simple steps, which at the time doesn't feel small at all. It feels huge, but right. You keep building that muscle one day at a time. And I'm definitely a big believer in one step at a time, 1% better, because that's how it happens. It's not this big giant leap. It's like, what is that small step you can take that scares you to death, but you can make that happen.
It's funny you bring up building a muscle. Martha McSally has a quote that I use often because I just love it. And she says that courage is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. I think it's absolutely true.
I do too. And I would wish for people, I've been forced out of my comfort zone again and again in life, whether I've been dragged kicking and screaming many times. But ultimately, it was all for my benefit, hugely for my benefit. And
Yeah.
I would wish that for anybody to get out of your preconceived day-to-day life and see the magic in the world, because there is a lot of magic. And I think as long as you can dream, you have that ability to create magic in your life.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that word magic, because it really does become something magical when you step into the unknown, which is what is outside your comfort zone. It's the unknown. And certainly there are all those things we're afraid that might happen, but there are also all these other things that might happen that you can't even imagine, that I'm sure you've experienced. I know I have. The other thing that that I've experienced is where, if you stay afraid. I heard somebody say that the safe route is not the safe route. Like,
Oh, that's so true, don't you think?
yeah, like playing it safe where you think, okay, as long as I stay in my little box here, nothing bad's gonna happen. But I don't know about you. What I've found though is that life has a way of kind of pushing you. And I think sometimes that discomfort or those unpleasant circumstances or whatever it may be, it's pushing you toward, I believe, becoming the best version of who you are. And I would say it's who you truly are. It's not even becoming something different than you are. It's just kind of breaking the shell off of who you really are. But if you don't take that step yourself, what's uncomfortable today maybe seems really uncomfortable today. I've had situations where, like, life has pushed me into some really uncomfortable situations. I'm like, man, I wish I would have taken that step years ago, and it would have been a whole lot better than this mess that I'm in today. That is way more uncomfortable than that thing that I could have gotten out of, years ago. So I don't know if you've experienced anything like that yourself.
Oh my gosh, many times over. I look at change and I think it's inevitable because the world is constantly changing. And when we resist change, it's going to get us sooner or later. So then we're usually looking at catastrophic change as
Yeah,
opposed to incremental change.
right.
Incremental change may be scary, but we can handle it. We can handle catastrophic change too, but it's that really just throws you out of your comfort zone. And it's a tough place to be on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think it's an opportunity to learn a lot about yourself and about the fact that you are strong, you are resilient, you are imperfect, and it's okay. Um, and it's an opportunity to build yet another step in terms of becoming more self-aware if you let the lesson sink in.
Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. And there was this kind of 10-year period in my life where from starting out just feeling lost, empty, depressed, those were actual words that I wrote in my journal, just
Mhm.
feeling like life is not what I want it to be. And I felt hopeless. I didn't know what to do. And then 10 years later, coming out on the other side of that, and having made some of these big changes, and it was had my best year ever in business, and just had made some really huge changes. And I wrote in my journal, uh, again, almost exactly 10 years later, how grateful I am just because. And I wrote that because, I was sure I was grateful for the business breakthrough. I was living in a new house, and a lot physically had changed in my life. And I was grateful for all that. But what I was really grateful for was what I had learned about myself over that 10-year period, what I'd learned about life, and just this belief that life is, I believe at its core, I believe life is good, which I know not everybody believes that. And certainly anybody's entitled to whatever they believe. But in my experience, I saw that while I could point out all these heartbreaks and all this pain, it was like every one of those quote disasters was pushing me to make the next step, to get me to step out of my comfort zone and experience things that otherwise I wouldn't have experienced. So but just to say, if you can get to that place where you can see the lesson as a gift, where even
Yeah.
even when the circumstances aren't so good, but I can see I'm learning, I'm growing, and even in this moment, like I don't know how this is going to turn out good, but I believe somehow it will. It really, at least I've found, changes your perspective on everything. Not to say it takes away all the pain, because by no means does it do that, but it definitely gives a different perspective as you're navigating these, crazy, crazy, uncertain disruptions in life.
Yeah, I often say we spend the first half of our lives being good citizens. We do what we're told, we go to school, we study what we're supposed to, we get the right job, we marry the right person. But what we're really doing is we're moving through life and having all these expectations and external influences just heaped upon us.
Hmm.
Then you hit midlife crisis, ho. And then that's an opportunity, if you'll take it, to start peeling away these artificial layers and start
Yeah,
to see who you really are underneath it. What have you learned? And where does your heart want you to go? Because I think we live in such a externally oriented materialistic society, we forget to listen to our heart and our intuition. And
yeah,
I think that those may be our best friends in terms of navigating life.
yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like I've learned that lesson over and over again
Yeah.
where,
Oh, you have to get it numerous times.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you learn the lesson. Okay, I'm always I'm gonna trust my heart, trust my gut, and then you don't, and like, oh yeah, shoot, I forgot. I learned this lesson once before, 20 times before. But
But it's hard.
you're so right. Yeah, because we're trained to listen to everybody else, like you said, from a young age. You go to school, sit down, shut up, do what you're
No.
told. You get a job, same thing. Clock in, clock out, do what you're told. It's unfortunate that it does take life experience, at least for most of us, to realize, oh, wait a minute, I've got some desires of my own, and really that's I say in the book, your desire is divine, whether you want to look at that through a spiritual lens, a religious lens, or just from the standpoint of the divine part of yourself, the highest part of yourself. That desire, learning to listen to that and honor that, it's definitely been one of the greatest lessons in my life. And it, like you said, the lessons continue. I'm not here to say I've figured anything out in completion. I think, like I say,
Oh, never say that.
no, it's like I've figured out some things that are worth figuring out, but I
Yeah.
haven't figured them out yet.
No, my one of my daily mantras is what can I learn? And I apply it to all things big and small.
Mm,
And I think when you start looking at life as kind of a learning adventure, it
yeah,
becomes it becomes kinder and a lot more interesting. And I think it also helps you look at these bumps and these instances where you have to get out of your comfort zone as a little more manageable. It's
yeah,
an adventure. What am I supposed to learn with this adventure? And it's
yeah,
also an opportunity to experiment, which, if you can get out of your comfort zone, is kind of fun.
yeah. I know somebody reminds me of a couple of things. Somebody gave me a question one time. They said, "Hey, I went to this class and hey, can I give you some tools?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, sure, give me some tools." And this woman took my journal and just wrote 4 questions in there. And I was like, "Oh, that's not what I was expecting for tools. I was thinking formulas or something like
Mhm.
that." But the first question was, "What great, grand, glorious adventure am I in store for?" And just speaking to what you said, when you see life as an adventure, and then another thing that came to me at some point along the way is like, if you can learn something, then you can never lose, because as long as you learn something, there is no
Yes.
loss. You learn, you're better, and you keep going.
Yeah, one of the things you talk about are beginnings and endings, and you can't always see a beginning when you're going through an ending.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. Um, what has been one of your biggest experiences with a beginning and ending that was foggy at the moment, but perfectly clear in retrospect?
Yeah. Right. It's definitely been one of the aha moments in my life. And I would say one of the biggest endings. I mean, a couple of them are that definitely were big endings. The big yellow sign, the flashing lights. This is the end.
The oncoming train.
Yeah, exactly. There's no missing it. I mean, divorce was one for me, and then bankruptcy was another one. So 2 times where basically that was, having to file some papers, having to take action and say, hey, this didn't work out the way I thought it would, and I've gone as far as I can go here. And both of those at the time looked like endings, because I had certainly some beliefs and baggage about both being wrong, and I can't do this, I don't want to do this. And so at the time, it felt like an ending. It felt like failure, and the bankruptcy was one of the biggest ones where I kind of saw this beginning to ending, or ending to beginning, I should say, because it was, I remember it was March when of the year when I filed bankruptcy. It was March that I was sitting in the courtroom and doing that, and which was humiliating and all the things. And then that very month, things began to turn around in my business, where new opportunities came in, new revenue came in, and within a few weeks, I was able to pay myself a salary for the first time in years. Within 2 months, we had our best month ever in 15 years in business. And I was thinking, I was like, because bankruptcy cancels debt, it doesn't create income. So I still
Yeah.
didn't know how this was going to work out. And I was like, man, where was this? If this had happened just a couple months before, it could have changed everything. But the year just kept going, and by the end of that year, by that December, we almost doubled what became our best month ever. We almost doubled that, and by far it was our best year ever at that time in 15 years in business. So it was a bankrupt to best year ever in the course of 9 months. And that to me was just a way to in black and white see what looks like an ending might be just the beginning. And again, it doesn't always happen. It certainly doesn't always happen in 9 months. But it was, I've experienced plenty of times since then where I've been back in those spaces and where I know that, okay, this looks like an ending. I don't see the new beginning. I don't see how this works out. But when you have enough of those experiences, I created something I call a faith file, and I invite everybody else to do the same. When you can, you stack together what I call the evidence that says, hey, there was an ending, and yet the fact I'm here today says it wasn't the end. I found a way through it, and so many of those things you come through and come out on the other side, and you realize, wait a minute, I'm better than I was before. And it's not just about having a better job or a better house or a better partner, but just realizing I'm wiser, I'm stronger, I'm more compassionate, I'm more patient, whatever it is, realizing you've grown. And you put that in your faith file. So then, it was a couple of years after our best year ever. A couple of years after that came the pandemic, and in a business built around speaking and live events, that was not our best year ever. And so I was like, I don't know how we're going to get through this, but again, I've got my faith file. I believe there's a way. And then kind of came into a dead end at one point with my son's school, where it's like, man, this is not right. This is not working. I don't know where we go from here. And then eventually landed in a different school district, and where things are amazing. And so just experience after experience, you just keep putting those things in your faith file. So then when you get to those places where you see an ending, you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. But yet my faith file says I will. And again, all this stuff, it's so easy to talk about it. I don't want to give the impression that any of it's easy, or
No, it's not.
that I don't
Easy.
struggle. Like, oh, it must be nice for you, Sean. You got it all figured out. It's like, no, it's easy to talk about, but practicing it, that's where the work is every day.
Well, I think in navigating change, you have skills. They may be interpersonal skills. They may be job-related skills. You have skills that can help you manage the change. But I think in terms of bridging that gap between now and whatever is coming, I have, as I've gotten older, come to believe that intuition is ever more important. I just made a major move over 1,000 miles, didn't really know anybody, and it was largely an intuitive move, which people would say is just crazy.
Yeah.
It is one of the best decisions I've ever made, and things just keep working out. And it's a real lesson for me, who started off as a very linear thinker. I'm not as much anymore. But it was a real lesson for me in terms of trusting your intuition and going with it. It is scary because our society doesn't support that type of right brain thinking.
Yeah.
And yet, if you can make that jump, whatever the jump may be for you, you have the skills to navigate it. You really do. Or you will develop them. And as you develop new skills, it keeps moving you farther out in the circle of comfort. And the world just gets bigger and bigger and better and better.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I guess I would just ask you, having made that move, first of all, I love hearing that story, and the kind of that's been your experience. And I'm guessing too, all, again, to move 1,000 miles, it sounds huge. It is huge, but I'm guessing you didn't make that decision to move 1,000 miles on the same day. Going back to what we were saying earlier, that probably started with, I don't know, with a phone call, a web search, or something. I mean, what would you say, kind of in terms of stepping outside your comfort zone? I don't know if you'd be willing to share any of those steps, but I think I'm sure there's a great picture there of how one step at a time you move 1,000 miles.
It started with enormous discomfort. I had volunteered for a campaign, and for a variety of reasons, decided to leave it. I was new to the area. I had put all this energy into everything, and all of a sudden, my entire social network was gone.
Mm,
And I found myself really depressed, which is not like me. I'm a reasonably sane and happy camper 90% of the time.
yeah.
But I was really depressed. And so I sought some help, and I realized what I was depressed about was really a repetitive element in my life where people pulled the rug out from underneath me. It happened again and again. And finally, in this instance, it was just that was it. It let all that energy loose, and I had to deal with it.
Mm,
And going through that, I realized that for a variety of reasons, where I was not working for me. There were factual reasons as well as more societal reasons that it just wasn't working. So I started a quest for some other areas. I'd considered, I'm in Idaho now. I'd considered that before. And I decided to come up with some, exploratory trips. And I really just made the jump, partly because I knew I could not stay where I was. I simply
yeah.
could not do it. It was incredibly isolating, and this was not during COVID, this was afterwards. I mean, I have the podcast, obviously, and I meet amazing people all over the world every week. But one-on-one, um, I was living in Arizona, my only social contact would be going to Trader Joe's, and they would ask me, "Did you find everything you wanted?" And I would say, "Yes, thank you." And I thought, "This is not healthy. This is
Yeah.
not okay."
Yeah.
So, in moving to Idaho, one of the things that I have forced myself to do out of a little bit out of my comfort zone, because I'm also an introvert by nature,
Yeah.
is I have decided that for the first year here, within reason, my answer to everything is yes. Do you want to go to a party? Yes. Do you want to go to
Yeah.
dinner? Yes. Do you want to play pickleball? Yes. Whatever it is, I have to keep pushing myself out. And one of the things that's interesting is that in doing that, I realize that I'm getting more and more comfortable with different areas of discomfort. So they're no
Yeah.
longer uncomfortable to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful, and it speaks to what we were talking about, just building up that courage muscle. And I love that saying, learning to say yes. That's definitely something it's been something that's in. I talk about it in my book, and same thing, like learning to say yes when life serves up an opportunity. Say yes, because that's what puts you in these other spaces. And I've found myself doing that. Where speaking opportunities have come up, and I've known on the inside, yes, I can do that, even though it's really scary, whether it's the nature of the audience or whatever it is. I know it's going to stretch me, but I say yes. And then, once you say yes, then you gotta you gotta do it. You gotta follow through. So it's kind of putting yourself on the hook, like, well, okay, I guess, let the courageous part of your brain say yes, and then the rest of your brain's like, what did you get us into? But okay, we'll do it. But the more you say that, like you said, it does get easier and easier. And then I find too, because life is cyclical,
Very
and
much.
I found myself go through phases or seasons where I'm really good at saying yes and stepping outside of my comfort zone, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I start not saying yes, and then the fear kind of takes over, becomes the more dominant feeling, which is usually that's the clue. Like I gotta start saying yes to more stuff, um, which is, yeah, just I love your story. Thanks for sharing that. I can certainly relate myself.
Oh, I think we can all relate. And, saying yes is not always comfortable. Sometimes you don't have a very good time. There are lots of different things that can happen, but it's all okay.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, you're racking up more experiences, and in experience lies wisdom.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, what is I guess we could say, what is the purpose of life? What are we here for? We probably all have different answers about that, but I think gaining those experiences, like, to me, like, that's something at the end of the day. Um, I'm not trying to rack up the biggest, boldest experiences. To me, the experience sometimes is, I mean, on the simplest level, like, let me make sure I look up and see the sky today, and look around
Yeah.
and see the flowers. But then beyond that, to say yes and know that, it's like, okay, so that didn't go so well. Probably didn't have to do that, but now I've got the experience, and you never know when that experience might show up. And like, well, thank goodness I did that. So now I'm going to be able to do this or whatever comes next.
No, I think you're so right. And I think that encouraging people to try new things. It's such a big world out there.
Yeah.
Don't you want to try some different things? And as long as you're there and you're present and you're trying, you will derive the benefits from that experience. You'll
Yeah.
have new skills, you'll have new perspectives, and all that will benefit you as you move forward. If you don't seek out something to widen your comfort zone, where does that leave you?
Yeah. No, I agree. There's two questions that I like to to ask myself. Is one is what is the path to my greatest growth, and the other is what is the path to serving at the highest level. And what I found, those questions will always take you outside your comfort zone, because the path to my greatest growth is never just staying the same, and the path to serving at the highest level is never just doing what's comfortable. But there is such reward on the other side of that. I mean, we're all it's inside us. We're wired to want to grow. I mean, growth and progress brings happiness. If there is no growth, then at some point we feel stagnant, and then we're not happy. So growth has an element of fulfillment in it, and then also serving. I mean, we're all wired, even being an introvert and having a tendency to isolate. I need that. That is part of my biology, that I know I need that space. But also, if I just retreat fully to myself, then life becomes empty, because we're here to connect with each other and serve. Uh, so it's those are just a couple of questions to me that help me continue to stretch and get outside my comfort zone.
You have made an interesting comment. I think it was on your website that you have a list of C's that you talk about in your upcoming book.
Yeah,
But you added, was it a fifth or a sixth one? And it was community.
yeah, the fifth one, right?
What brought you to the realization that you needed to add that to these steps to navigate life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely one of those big aha moments for me. I think it was a combination of things, like so many things in life. Somebody said it happened really slowly, and then all of a sudden, it's like it took a lot of experiences leading up to it. But before, I lived in Nashville. I told you I moved to Nashville when I was 17, and I lived there for almost 30 years until just going on 2 years ago. And I was seeing a therapist there in Nashville, and one of the things he said to me in our last appointment, he said, Sean, you're better equipped than most to face life by yourself. But he said, my hope for you is when you move, that you find a community of belonging. So that was sort of planting the seed, or I suppose foreshadowing there. But where I moved to Ohio, where my now wife had already been living. My parents left our childhood home in Missouri. They moved to Ohio to be closer to my younger brother who was here. So having lived, 7 hours away from my family for most of my life, just getting closer to family, and then also getting plugged in with the school district here that is really so much more equipped to support my son, and just has structures in place and people in place. Experiencing all that benefit in my life, being closer to family, having the support of a school. Whereas in Tennessee, I felt like I was fighting against the school every day, and here kind of being joined with the school. But whether it's personally, professionally, I mean, in business, certainly I can point to a lot of my growth has come through either working with coaches or going to seminars, putting myself in mastermind groups, in a collective group, just realizing that, the limitations of tackling life alone compared to the rewards and the strength that comes from connecting with others, and truly having that community of belonging. I just realized, I was like, I've spoken pretty much everything I've spoken about for years is really, we could boil it down to self-reliance. Like, what can I do in this moment? Because for all of us in any given situation, the one thing you can count on is yourself. So what can I do? That's what I wanted to share with others. Those were kind of the tools and skills I was aiming to develop myself. But then finally just waking up to realize, that you can learn all the skills for yourself, but there's going to come a time where you can't do it, and you've got to be surrounded by others. And so that was sort of the awakening for that. And then at the same time, not that it's not a one-way street either, because just as you're going to need help, if you withdraw and withhold yourself, then you're withholding yourself from somebody out there needs you. So community is a place where we can both give and receive, and find strength, but also find meaning. And And I say all this knowing it's not rocket science for some listeners. Like I've known this since the day I was born, but for for an introvert and a shy introvert, it's taken a while to learn that.